Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, we all love Section 420 at Yankee Stadium, but in this episode, we're just going to catch the views from 314 feet with Randy and Bobby. Views from 314 feet, obviously right field at Yankee Stadium. So just maybe want how you guys, started the blog, what got into it, what was the inspiration?
So we always used to chat on Twitter, and like Randy and I especially used to talk on Twitter all the time. And then we met at a game, and it was right around the time that River Ave Blues, which was a site that everyone else but Randy actually we were writing for. And then when they shut down, we said, all right, well, we should start up our own thing. And we brought Randy on board, and we started up just about a year ago this weekend or next weekend, pretty much. And then we've been kind of at it ever since, added the podcasts, and now here we are fighting through the quarantine.
So it's, views from 314 feet. Obviously, they can check your website, but also your podcasts are available on both Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Yep. Now, any particularly you chose 314 feet? Now, obviously, I'm biased. I think Section 420 is the best area to watch a game, but is there any reason why you chose 314 feet, or just because it's like one of the landmark parts of Yankee Stadium, just that that signage in right field?
Landmark, something iconic, something that people can easily identify with. I mean, since we were an offshoot blog of River Ave Blues, we needed something that was immediately identifiable for people. So the short porch is obviously something that every Yankee fan, every baseball fan is well aware of. So it just seemed like a natural fit for a new blog to attach themselves to something that people could immediately identify with. So yeah, we just went with that and made sense, and I think it caught on pretty quickly from all the responses that we got from people when we first launched the blog.
So, as I'm sure we all heard that now, MLB took a proposal to the Players Union in terms of getting the game back, and it looks like, from the rumors we're hearing about, it has to be approved, but we're looking about perhaps a mid-June or late June spring training, and then kind of starting the season up in July, obviously all over the country. What are your thoughts on that in terms of, they're probably going to use, like Arizona, Texas, obviously away from New York?
I mean, I think it's interesting. We've heard so many different proposals over the past, 8 weeks or so, that it's hard to know. I mean, it feels like this one is actually accelerating. And just from the noise and the fact that, you have Scott Boras, who generally is very good at reading the room, writing an op-ed in the Times talking about how important it is to bring baseball back, kind of signifies that the players are going to be on board with this too. Whether or not it's a medically informed decision is a kind of a different question, I think. And I know Randy has a lot of thoughts about that. But it feels like we're moving toward some starting up sometime. You keep hearing about July 4th. I mean, who knows what's going to happen at this point, but it definitely sounds like there's more chatter and it's more serious than it has been at any point in all of this.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this. I'm not a huge fan of opening before the country has a better grasp and better understanding of how to properly address this. So we're no longer in the pandemic stage. I feel like everybody else, I want things to return to some semblance of normalcy. I understand that moving forward, there's going to be a new normal, and I understand people wanting to have a distraction and have some things that remind them of how things were before the pandemic hit. But I just think there's so many things that are happening outside of sports that it's pretty irresponsible to aggressively launch a season when we just don't have this under control for multiple reasons. So I think July is too early. I don't think that – I know that in the NBA, some of the teams have been told that whatever testing they have for their players doesn't impact the supply for everyday citizens. But I'm not totally sure that I believe that, and I think that there's a lot of financial motivations behind it. I don't think that this is totally sincere in wanting to do something for the country and the collective psyche of the country. I think that there's a lot of financial motivations behind this, and I want to see baseball, but I want it to be done responsibly, and I don't think that MLB or any other sports league has been totally upfront about their motivations for trying to get the season started. And in terms of the specific plans, I'm definitely not for the plan where spring trainings would happen in teams' home cities. I just think that that's setting teams up for danger. I think minimizing the amount locations that the league plays in is more advantageous if they actually want to kick this off and not have any interruptions during the season. I just don't see how travel-wise that works, logistically how it works. I think having the hub city idea is probably the best one. But even then, there are a lot of these cities that are beginning to see rises in cases after their like a gradual reopening of their state. So I don't know. I think it's complicated, and I think that they need to be more responsible than they have been up until this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, really, it's more about, I think, just the travel, just going back and forth, going cross country. So yeah, if they do bring this open, just keep it, like, whether it's a hub city or hub cities, just trying to keep it contained at one point. Now, in terms of the fans, we're all Yankee fans. We all want to get back as soon as possible to the stadium. But I mean, do you think fans are really going to run back, or you think a lot of them just going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to sit this year out because I just, I don't trust the system. I don't trust being around a large group of people.
I think as we work through some of these reopening plans anyway, having 50,000 people in a stadium is probably going to be one of the last things that's opening, if you will. But I do think there's going to be an element of self-policing. Like, say, just in the most wildly optimistic scenario, you get, on July 15th, the Yankees have a home opener. Everyone can go full, like, there's no restrictions whatsoever, which obviously is pretty unlikely. But I do think that you're going to see a lot of fans, I mean, just people that I've spoken to know, like, I probably won't be going back to 161st and River until 2021. Just from, just the fact that people's own personal comfort level is going to be different than it ever has before. Like Randy said, it's going to be a new normal, like no matter what we're technically allowed or not allowed to do.
Yeah, I think for New York specifically, I don't see a lot of crowds happening. I'm not even sure if we'll be allowed to enter the stadium. I mean, the numbers are coming down, thankfully, but we're the hotspot of the virus. We were pretty much ground zero. And I think that mentally and emotionally, people might not be ready to put themselves in a situation where they feel like they're at risk, even though a lot of precautions might be taken to ensure people's safety. I mean, there's a mental and emotional aspect to all of this too. So how comfortable would you feel being 3 seats away from somebody seated in a huge stadium and trying to focus on the game and not focus on, what if this person coughs or sneezes, and then you start making assumptions about the people around you. What if you have to go to the bathroom, concession stands, even entering and exiting the building? I mean, even if they have the social distancing and cut down the capacity, you're still coming across a pretty large amount of people if people do decide to go to the game. So I'm not sure. Personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. I don't totally feel comfortable going to the grocery store with a mask on either. So I don't know. It's just, some of it is just mental, and like having the mental comfort of being from home and watching the game and knowing that you're safe. So I don't mind waiting till next year to attend a game in person.
Yeah, I mean, whenever they make this decision, I think it should go all in or not, because whether a stadium has 20,000 people or 40 or 50, virus is there or not, and I think just by limiting it, does like, all right, well, there's only 20,000 people here, so we're not going to get the virus. I just think you should go full in or not. And in terms of like, how do you do that with the tickets? I mean, you got people that had Yankee tickets for like decades. And, this has been my seat for so many years. Like, how do you decide to break the seats down? So I think it's too complicated. So I'm in favor, like, when they just do this, just go all in or not in at all.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I mean, honestly, I would be surprised if there are fans at Yankee Stadium at all. And then that raises its own questions, right? Because say you're in, you're playing in a stadium that's not in such a hard hit area. Like, are they allowed to have fans and Yankee Stadium's not? Like, how's the Steinbrenner family going to feel about that? So like, it becomes a league-wide issue. Like, if the Yankees and Mets aren't allowed to have people in the stadium at all, like, is there going to be a gate in, I don't know, like pick any of the other 28 stadiums where maybe it's not as bad? Like, I think this becomes complicated. So I do kind of agree with the idea that it's either no fans at all, like across the league, or you're reopening at a time when everyone can go.
Yeah, it has to be uniform. I mean, because beyond just the competitive integrity of it, there's a lot of financial implications for it too. Like, I highly doubt the Steinbrenners and Randy Levine are going to be cool with like the Royals being able to have a gate and the Yankees not being able to have a gate. So there's no way that the owners of teams that are in larger cities like the Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox, etc., are going to let these small market teams be able to take advantage of the circumstances that they're in terms of less cases as opposed to these larger metropolitan areas. So it has to be uniform. I mean, I don't have any question that that would be the case. You can't competitive reasons. Also, like that kind of enhances the home field advantage idea, and kind of tips the scales a little bit too much. And then the economic impact of it as well. I don't see 30 billionaires agreeing on some places get a gate and others don't. So
Yeah,
that's
nor
a
should they.
non-starter. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you could kind of do it is if you had a sort of like a round robin, like they said, they were trying to use maybe 3 cities and that's it. Now, if it rotates, then I think that's fair. So, for example, like the Red Sox and White Sox play in Texas, and then the next week, Yankees and Orioles play in Texas. Yeah, if they round robin in it, where everyone kind of gets a fair piece, that would be the way to go. I think in terms of that, in terms of, you can't have some teams have home games and some don't. I think that's not fair. But if you at least round robin that in other stadiums where no one's really ever the home team, home crowd, I guess that's really the only way to really fairly do it.
Yeah, I
And I
agree.
think that's probably what's going to end up happening. Like if you gave me an ultimatum today and said you have to choose something, like I feel like it's still very complicated, and I don't envy the folks at MLB who have to set up this system. But that feels to me the way that it will be most fair and also the least complicated. Like I just can't see a scenario in which you have all 30 parks opening like as normal and trying to cram 100 games into 115 days or whatever. Like that just doesn't feel like logistically possible to me at all. But then again, that's why I don't create a schedule for MLB, but I would just be very surprised if that were the case.
I also think there's a little bit of first generation iPhone mentality going on too between the leagues. Like who's going to take the first step? Who's going to be the guinea pig? Who's going to risk their necks, for lack of a better description? Who's going to be the first one to kind of be the test baby to see what's going to work, what's not going to work, and how feasible certain plans, certain logistical approaches are going to work. So I think they might not admit this publicly, but it kind of feels like the NHL, the NBA, and the MLB are all kind of peeking at each other to see who's going to want to take the leap and see which plan might be the most feasible so that the other ones can kind of adapt it for their own specific sport and then move forward from there.
No, it's actually a great point because, they all seem to mimic each other. And I remember when they started shutting it down, it was the NBA first. Then the NHL was like, whoa, now we got to shut down. Then baseball was like, whoa, now we got to shut down. So actually, that's a great point. I think once one of the dominoes falls, you'll notice all the other sports kind of follow suit. And they're like, well, we were just following them. It's not our fault. But, it seems like at least baseball is going to be the first guinea pig. One, it's because the way the season's set up, to probably peak dip their toe in the water with this. And then once they get rolling, you see the other sports kind of just say, right, we'll just follow that model. And if we're going to blame anyone, blame them. We're just following their model. Switching gears, I guess we'll go on the field, a little more exciting, at least a little more cheerful with the players. So obviously I saw one of your recent articles regarding Aaron Judge, at least one of your recent posts that, again, seems like the rib issue is still there, not really healed 100%. I mean, should at this point they just say, you know what, we're not sure what the season's going to be, just sit it out and come back 2021?
I think if you want to take a strictly kind of cynical point of view, like the delayed season is pretty good for the Yankees from one perspective because they were pretty banged up, and now you're having by the time the season starts up, you're going to have James Paxton probably be okay and ready to go, and then there's a couple others also. I mean, Stanton and Sanchez were banged up. Judge is a little bit of a different case. I don't really know what's going on there. I mean, Aaron Boone kind of did his typical thing the other day where he talked him up like, oh, everything's great, the rib is healing, blah, blah, blah. But also he's going back for another scan and it's not healing properly yet. So it's kind of like, you don't know what the hell's going on with him. But it's a serious injury. I mean, he had a collapsed lung, he had a broken rib. It's been months. I mean, he got hurt in September. So it's hard to say what's going to happen with him. Hopefully we find out in 3 weeks that it's healing better. And then if the season starts up in July, maybe he ends up just missing a few weeks. But at this point, I don't know what you guys think, but it feels to me like it's actually a possibility that he doesn't suit up at all.
I don't really have I'm not trying to predict anything with him. I just think it's bizarre. I mean, I just think the handling of it was bizarre. I think the duration of time between the injury and treatment is bizarre. I think the slow healing of a rib or a bone that hasn't had surgery on it is bizarre. I mean, I just think that the whole situation is weird. I don't know what to make of it. Knowing how the Yankees are really weird with how they give out medical information to the public, I wouldn't be surprised if there was even more to the injury than what they're letting on. They basically addressed this in February and we're in May, and they still don't think that the bone has been healed, yet the injury took place in September. I mean, his last game action was in October. So I just find it bizarre.
Now, in terms of other young Yankees, obviously Gary Sanchez, soon enough, the Yankees are going to have to make a decision on him. You know, are we going to stick with this guy long term? Now, you have a phenomenal hitting catcher. Obviously, his defense, you know, it's been spotty. It's been getting, I guess this past season made improvements. But what do you think the Yankees' mind is with Gary Sanchez? I mean, do you stick with him long term, or is this kind of like, hey, you know what? You know, this guy's a bit of a head case. We're not going to invest, 150 or 200 million in this guy.
I'm all in on Gary Sanchez. I think he is a very unique talent. You're not going to get much better production from a catcher. Like if you look league wide, there's maybe one or two guys who you might say you'd rather have than him. And there's really nobody in the Yankees pipeline at the moment that I think is ready to step up and do any better than he does. So and the Yankees love him. I mean, you hear Cashman and Boone, the way they talk about him and stick behind him, even in 2018 when he was, really struggling, they had no problem putting him out in the playoff series against Boston or against Oakland in the wild card game. And, they just said, this is our guy. Like he's the one, he's behind the plate, he's playing all 9 innings. And they had other players like Andujar, who was the sensation of the year, who they pulled from the game mid-game. So even with the same kind of defensive struggles. So I think it just goes to show you that if you read the tea leaves a little bit, I don't think they're as frustrated with him as some fans, or sometimes it even reads like they are.
You're speaking to the president of the Gary Sanchez fan club. So, I mean, I think the criticism towards him is ridiculous. I mean, I understand like some of the issues that people have with pass balls, but that's like the most obvious thing that people can look at to evaluate catcher defense. And there's so much more to that position than blocking a pitch in the dirt that comes with that position. And I just think that he's a better defensive catcher than people like to give him credit for when you take the totality of the position and what that position demands of players. And I think he's a phenomenal offensive talent. I mean, he should be a Yankee for life. He's their catcher. I don't think that this is really much of a debate for me, from my perspective. I guess you could say JT Realmuto is somebody that you would have in his place, but I wouldn't take Realmuto over Sanchez anyway. I just think Sanchez is a superior offensive player. And when you're talking about the middle of the diamond, when you can get elite level production from behind the plate, you don't trade that in for anything or anybody, as far as I'm concerned. So he provides, when he's on and when he's healthy, he provides an advantage that they have over every team in the league. So I think that he has an incredible value, and I think that the team is smart to stick behind him. And I think that he's a hard worker. I think that there was obvious improvement from 2018 to 2019, and I think the new catching instructor is going to have a positive impact on his performance defensively if we get a season this year. And I'm all for Gary Sanchez. I mean, like I said, I'm the president of the fan club, so I think he's a necessary component and a big part of the core of this current Yankees team.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off that for a second, because one of the things that I'm most regretting about not being able to see so far, like from a baseball point of view, one of the most disappointing impacts of the shutdown is that we haven't been able to see the new stance that Gary was implementing in spring training with Tanner Swanson, who's the new catching coordinator that Randy referenced. Like, it was something I was watching like every single time I turned the Yankees on in the spring. You could tell he was much lower to the ground. and the Yankees brought Swanson in from Minnesota after he took a similarly, plus bat catcher who had some defensive issues and turned him into a great framer, which Gary has always been, except for last year when he was focusing more on pass balls and also limiting the pass balls by tweaking with the stance a little bit defensively. So I think that would have been really fascinating to watch. And I felt like if it really clicked for him and worked defensively, that we would have been looking back on 2018 and the pass ball issue kind of with the, laughing back, like remember when type situation. So it's disappointing to not have been able to follow that for now, but I'm looking forward to seeing it when we do pick up. I think it's going to make a big impact on Gary, and then that will free up a lot of this criticism, which I agree with Randy is generally unwarranted.
Total agreement. With that in terms of Gary Sanchez, I mean, again, get a hitting catcher like that doesn't fall off, doesn't grow on trees, as they say. So, and I think he'll just get better over time in terms of blocking balls, calling games, stuff like that. And I mean, he has a cannon for an arm. He guns people down left and right. And like you said, since he's kind of a duck out of the water to be able to hit like that, you look at an MVP type. And even go back to like the 90s Yankees, they always say, the old adage, being strong up the middle. We always had Posada, Jeter, Bernie. Now we got Gary Sanchez, Glaber. I know Hicks is out a little bit, but when Hicks is in there and healthy, he's pretty damn good, probably better than most center fielders in terms of his switch hitting ability. I mean, the Yankees have a clear advantage over anyone else.
Agreed.
And it's funny, too. Everyone looks back with kind of rose-colored glasses, but remember everyone used to complain about Jorge Posada's defense? Now everyone says, oh, why isn't Gary Sanchez like Jorge Posada? Just, it makes me laugh a little bit. Like, it's always better when you look back on it in hindsight. But the Yankees stuck with Jorge for, 15 years behind the plate, despite him being below average defensively because of what he did with his bat. So I think the answer is right there for you.
Now, one more Yankee that, kind of up in the air a little bit, has a ton of talent, but again, there's really no spot for him, is Miguel Andujar. I mean, do you think somehow the Yankees work him into the fold, or is that someone is just going to end up being, traded, some point, whether this season or next season?
Well, I think Andujar is an interesting one because they clearly love his bat. Like, I think they made a spot for him in 2018 when it didn't necessarily look like there was one for him, and then he just didn't give it back. And that just is what it is. So I think that they're going to do the same thing again. They can rotate him around in the outfield where he's been working out a little bit. They love to rotate around in the infield. But, they never play guys, 15 games in a row. So there's going to be at-bats for him. They can put him in at first base. He can DH, obviously. I think it more depends on how he returns from the injury. It's not an easy injury to come back from. There's not a long list of players who return at 100% of their production like they were before. But I think they have a long way to go before they give up on Andujar, unless, of course, the right deal comes around. I mean, the Yankees are very shrewd. And if they do trade him, I mean, I generally give the team the benefit of the doubt at this point with basically almost everything that they do, to be honest, in terms of transactions.
Yeah, I mean, he's Alfonso Soriano. I mean, talented bat. Don't really know where to play him. Stick him out in left field. Becomes serviceable as an outfielder. Has great years in pinstripes, and then they trade him for somebody like Alex Rodriguez. I mean, not to say that the Yankees would make a trade on that level, but I agree with Bobby. If there was a chance to get an elite player, they're going to use Miguel Andujar as a chip. So for me, he's this generation's Alfonso Soriano. Super talented player, super talented offensive player. Who has a rare ability to get the bat on the ball with authority and with consistency. He has tremendous value, but I think that they recognize that if there's a chance for them to cash in that chip to get somebody to really improve the team in an area that they think that they might need improvement in, I think they're going to do it. So I think that the comp to Alfonso Soriano is eerily accurate. Both had great rookie years. So and I do think Andujar will be a pretty productive left fielder. I think he looks comfortable out there. I think his instincts are better for the outfield than the infield. I don't think he has the agility to really master third base. A lot of people talk about his throwing, but for me, is always his footwork. The feet dictate the arm in a lot of cases. So it just seems like he struggled agility-wise at third base. You put him out in left field, he has time to react. He has good instincts. I mean, he has good jumps on the ball. So I think left field is a better position for him. So I think that he'll be pretty good out there once he gets more reps in. But And I really like him. I'm a fan, but I also think, like Bobby does, if there's a chance for them to get somebody that they think fits what they need a little bit better, then I think that there's a chance that he could be moved. But I don't think that that's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, I wouldn't even know who that player would be or what that need would be. Maybe pitching down the road going into next year, but I think that he's safe on this roster for this year, and I think he's going to be super productive if we get a season this year.
Now, in terms of the outfield, obviously it's very crowded, and one of these players, the same thing, same deal in there. Not really a spot for him, but I love the way the ball, flies off his bat is Clint Frazier. Now, half the, guests on the show love him, and half say, no, I hate it. He's a head case. Get rid of him. And where do you stand on Clint Frazier?
I mean, Clint, I love Clint. Yeah, good old Clint, right? I mean, I know Randy can go ahead on this one because he's another one of leading the fan club.
Yeah, I think he's really talented. I think he's really good. I mean, we have to keep in mind, like, when people say he's a head case, he's not a head case. He had a concussion. Like, he had a severe head injury that he didn't recover from in the season that he had it. And then he had to, in real time, figure out how to deal with the after effects of playing his position with a wall behind him and having a concussion history. It's not that easy. Like, you look at guys like Bobby Abreu. Bobby Abreu was a really good player. He was scared of the wall. There's reasons why some people are scared of the wall. And Clint Frazier has a very valid reason for being uncomfortable making certain plays. Also, what goes along with that, and I don't think that this was talked about nearly enough, is that when it comes with a concussion, like, you might have spatial awareness issues. Like, you might not always know where you're at, and it might take you a while to get your bearings and understand where you are spatially. And a lot of times he looked in between playing balls in the outfield, and I think part of it was jumps. Part of it was just the possibility that he spatially was he wasn't totally sure where he was or how to approach it, and depth perception. Those are all things that, like, can be side effects or residual impacts from a traumatic brain injury. It's not that simple as, like, go catch the ball. So I think it didn't really impact him at the plate. I think he's still a really talented hitter. Obviously, the issues came with defense, but I think that there's something very specific that we can target to and look at to say that that's where the issue was.
No, actually, it's a good breakdown. Actually, I didn't think of that. And yeah, man, if he could figure out the fielding, because I think he's a phenomenal hitter, and then it gives a situation where, like, yeah, someone maybe could tell Judge to sit the year out. If you could get that type of, because I think Clint can provide some good. If you put him in there, all he does is hit home runs and drive and run. So, Randy and Bobby, I appreciate jumping on again. Catch both of you on Views from 314 Feet, available on your website as well on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. And hopefully at some point we'll be back in the stadium. I don't know whether this year, next year, but we're going to congregate in Section 420 though. You got to promise me Section 420.